Okay, so I'll do the salutation one more time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so today is November 4th, 2023. And now we are starting a new chapter in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses. In the last class, we finished the Book of Fives, and now we start on the Book of Sixes. And again, to go through the Anguttara Nikaya a bit more quickly, what we'll be doing is just taking selected suttas. And so I'm going to share the screen. Okay, and making sure you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yes, Bhante.
And we could increase the point size. Okay, the size is okay.
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so I'm starting off in the Book of Sixes with the Sutta number 10. And this is a sutta with the Buddha in conversation with one of the Sakyans named Mahanama. I think he was probably a cousin of the Buddha. Okay, so Mahanama comes to the Buddha and then he asks the question, how does a noble disciple who has arrived at the fruit and understood the teaching often dwell? And these are important phrases that are used in the question. I think I had the note on those. Well, you could see from the Pali words used in the note that we have agata palo. So the word pala means the fruit, and this is a technical term meaning the fruit of the path. It refers to any of the stages of realization, the stages of attainment. And agata means come to, in the sense of attained. So Mahanama is not asking just about how any disciple should practice, but how a disciple who has reached realization, at least the stage of stream entry, how they often dwell. And by dwelling, what he means is how they practice. What is their mode of practice? So it's one who has arrived at the fruit and understood the teaching not just intellectually or conceptually, but attained realization of the teaching, who has penetrated to the truth of the Dhamma, the fundamental truth. And so we often see in the suttas a stock passage when the Buddha is speaking to somebody who comes to him, an inquirer, and he'll give an exposition of the Dhamma. And then what happens when the Buddha arrives at the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, it's said that in the mind of that listener, there arises the dustless, stainless eye of the Dhamma, the eye that sees into the truth of the Dhamma. Virajang vigatamalang dhammachakung udapadi. And so that means that the disciple with the eye of the Dhamma sees the truth of the Dhamma. And then the passage continues that he is one who is, I think it goes, Dita Dhammo, Vidita Dhammo, Pariyogalha Dhammo, one who has seen the Dhamma, understood the Dhamma, fathomed the Dhamma. And so all of those are sort of loaded phrases which indicate that somebody has reached a stage of realization. And so this question is asking, how does one who has reached one of these stages of realization often dwell in the sense of often practice. What is their mode of practice? So the Buddha is going to answer by explaining what comes to be called the 6 recollections. Okay, so first he begins with the recollection of the Buddha. And this is the stock formula for recollection of the Buddha. When we had our retreat over Labor Day weekend, where we did the 4 protective meditations, the first protective meditation is recollection of the Buddha. And at that retreat, I think I gave a fairly detailed explanation of the 9 epithets or designations of the Buddha. So I'll just treat them briefly here. So he says that the noble disciple recollects the Tathagata, thus the Blessed One is an Arahant. So the first quality is the word Arahant, which means one who has completely eradicated the defilements of the mind, greed, hatred, and delusion, or the 4 taints or influences, eradicated them, uprooted them right down to the most fundamental level, and thereby achieved liberation from the cycle of repeated birth and death. So that is the sense of arahat or arahant. But then the Buddha is not only liberated from the cycle of birth and death, but he's samma sambuddho, fully, completely, perfectly enlightened, the one who understands, who has penetrated the nature of all dhammas. Then he's accomplished in true knowledge. That seems a little redundant. I would say now clear knowledge and excellent conduct. And then the commentaries give a somewhat detailed explanation of the different types of clear knowledge and the different types of excellent conduct. But I think it's just enough to practice on the basis that the Buddha is one who has, on the one hand, cognitively correct understanding, and in terms of behavior, flawless, perfectly ethical, compassionate behavior. Then he is sukhato, here translated fortunate, but it literally means well gone, in the sense that the Buddha has gone along the good path, that is the Noble Eightfold Path, to the good destination, arrived at the good destination, that destination being the state of liberation or the living realization of Nibbana. So he's well gone. He's knower of the world. And then again, there are different ways to understand the meaning of this expression. So one way is sort of more intellectual, that he's understood the world that consists of the 5 aggregates, or basically all conditioned phenomena. So he's understood the world in that sense. But also he's knower of the world in that he knows and sees the different realms of existence, from the heavenly realms down through the human realm, animal realm, to the hell realms. And he knows the sentient beings that inhabit these different realms of existence. The way I like to see this expression or this formula, that we see a transition with knower of the world, a transition from the Buddha's function of securing his own self-benefit, his own self-liberation, with the qualities of arahat, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in clear knowledge and conduct, and well gone, with knower of the world in the sense of knowing the sentient beings of the world. This prepares him for the task of benefiting others, which we see in the next expression, that he's the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed. And this expression is playing off what seems to have been a common expression during the Buddha's time about somebody who is in the king's service, because the king would have elephants and horses, which originally, of course, they're captured in the wild. And then there's a person who is charged with taming and training the elephants or the horses. And so that person is called a trainer of horses to be tamed, or the trainer of elephants to be tamed. But the Buddha is the trainer of persons to be tamed, of human beings, because he can train and tame the most difficult, the most stubborn, the most obstinate people, including sometimes proud Brahmins who refuse to show respect to anybody in any of the other social classes. The grief-stricken woman who's lost her child and is overwhelmed by grief. Alcoholics who are difficult to lead away from their addiction to alcohol, but the Buddha is able to train them. And even sort of the exemplary, the supreme example of this is the Buddha's ability to tame and transform the serial killer Angulimala and turn him into an enlightened arahat. So he's the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and human beings. And we see the Buddha in the role of teaching devas, particularly in the first chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, actually the first two chapters of the Samyutta Nikaya, where in the Buddha's sort of daily routine, he sets off a particular period late at night. Probably it would correspond to like from midnight to about 2 a.m. when everybody else is sound asleep. During that period, the devas from the different heavenly realms come to the Buddha and ask the Buddha questions, and the Buddha will reply to their questions. And so those little suttas, and the questions are often in the form of riddles, and the Buddha will unravel and disentangle the riddle. So we see many suttas of that kind in chapters 1 and 2 in the Samyutta Nikaya. Okay, then he is of course, he's Buddha, which means the enlightened one. And this designation seems, the question always comes up, how is that different from Samma Sambuddho? Fully enlightened, completely enlightened, and simply Buddho, enlightened one. So the way the commentaries explain this is that this phrase or this expression occurs here to indicate that the Buddha is not only enlightened himself, but he is one who enlightens others. So he's Buddho as in Pali, Bodhita, one who enlightens others, who awakens others. So in a way, this follows from being the teacher of devas and human beings. So he not only teaches, but he guides them and brings them to their own awakening, their own enlightenment. And then he is Bhagava. Like this is really like probably the most loaded and heaviest expression used in relation to the Buddha. So it sort of signifies the one who is the most worthy of veneration, admiration, reverence, and devotion. because he possesses the most excellent, the most exalted qualities. Yeah, when the Chinese came to this expression, and they would have had the Sanskrit form, Bhagavant, they rendered it Shizun. Is that the correct tone? Sh or sh? The tone? Fourth tone. Sh, zun. Okay.
Zun.
Sh, zun. Okay, so that is sh is world, and zun is reverence or veneration. So translators into English use the world-honored one, the one venerated by the world. Okay, so this takes us through the formula with the 9 designations, the 9 qualities of the Buddha. And then we have the important passage here showing how this particular recollection functions as an object or subject of meditation. So why it is recommended by the Buddha as a subject of meditation. So when the disciple recollects the Tathagata, on that occasion, his, or we should say his or her, mind is not obsessed, overrun, dominated, driven by lust, hatred, or illusion. So one is calling to mind the Buddha as one who is utterly and completely liberated, purified of greed or lust, hatred, anger, delusion, ignorance. And so when one is calling the Buddha to mind, then one's mind is not overrun by those defilements, those unwholesome states. And of course, when one starts off that meditation, such kinds of thoughts will still arise, will still occur. But as one repeatedly goes through the formula, bringing the qualities of the Buddha to mind with focus, with understanding their meaning, what I found in my own experience that it has really a very sort of interesting effect that seems to me to be a little bit different from doing something like mindfulness of breathing or any of the other, like contemplating the postures of the body. It seems to me when doing those meditations, I'm relying very much on my own personal power. So I think this is what you call zili, is that what it is in Chinese? So relying on one's own personal power. Whereas when doing the meditation on the qualities of the Buddha, I get almost the effect of, is it taji, tali? Other power, that there's some other power which is sort of suffusing the mind and helping to clarify the mind. And it doesn't happen at once. You just don't sit down and start to do it, and that happens automatically. But as one does it over time, bringing these qualities to mind, circulating the 9 qualities through the mind or through the heart, you get a feeling of some kind of power coming almost from outside oneself, which is causing all of those disturbing, distressful mental states and thoughts to subside, and the mind gets uplifted by this joy and happiness and sense of purity and spiritual power. Yeah, the way, sort of the way that I've done this meditation myself and the way I have sometimes taught it. So sometimes people raise the question that 9 qualities is quite a lot to wrap one's mind around. So how does one actually do this? So what I say is first one should become acquainted with the meanings of these qualities. And I mentioned a book by the Malaysian nun, her name is Sayalay Susila. She has put together a book called, I think it's called, no, I don't remember the exact quality, the 9 attributes of the Buddha. If you search for Susila, 9 attributes of the Buddha, even if the title is 9 qualities of the Buddha or 9 designations, I'm sure it will turn up. And she brings together passages from the text that, well, she gives the explanation of the 9 qualities in detail, and then cites passages from the text that exemplify these 9 designations. So one starts off with some understanding of the meaning of the 9 qualities, and initially one uses all 9 of them to get familiar with them. But in order to develop stronger power of concentration, greater focus, what I normally suggest is after you get familiar with the 9 qualities, you find some of the qualities are more meaningful to you, have a deeper impact on the mind, a clearer meaning. Others seem a little bit remote or inaccessible. So what I say is you drop those qualities that are not so clear, not so impressive, not so gripping on the mind, that don't have such a strong grip on the mind, and just select the 3 designations that are most meaningful, that have the strongest impact, and work for some time with the 3 designations. Okay, then the way the meditation works, or this practice works, first you're calling to mind the qualities of the Buddha, and so these thoughts and mental volitional activities, mental formations governed by lust, hatred, and delusion subside, and then the mind becomes straight, more focused, based on the Tathagata or the Buddha. And then there comes, here the word is translated inspiration. Yeah, I see that I have the online version of this file. Yeah, what I'm going to do is to stop the share and start again, this time with this is the PDF, so I can type into it. Yeah, the word is translated as inspiration, but the original word is difficult to translate. Yeah, the word is Veda, which is also the name of the sacred scriptures of Brahmanism. But the Buddha took this word and then used it, giving his own meaning to it. So there's something here called Atta Veda and Dhamma Veda. So I translated that as inspiration in the meaning and inspiration in the Dhamma. But the word Veda sort of combines the senses according to the explanation in the commentary. It combines the senses of joy and knowledge. So we know from this verbal root, vij, or vid is the root from which we get the noun vijja, meaning higher knowledge. And from the same root vid, we get Veda. So Veda has one nuance is that of knowledge, but it also has the sense of what one experiences, of experience. And so I think the commentary explains it as knowledge associated with joy. So if anybody can think of a better English word that conveys that sense of a kind of knowledge that's accompanied by joy and infused by joy, then maybe suggest it to me. So I just used inspiration. So it's a kind of upliftment based on understanding the meaning and gaining some understanding of the Dhamma. And then one gains joy connected with the Dhamma. And so this is the sort of dynamics of this meditation and of all of the recollections that will follow, calling to mind the subject, the subsiding of lust, of thoughts governed by lust, hatred, and delusion, clarity of mind, inspiration bringing joy. Then from joy there comes the quality that's in Pali, piti. Again, the translation rapture, it's not fully satisfactory. The Pali word is piti, uplifting joy. I was going to say rapturous joy. Okay, so then this is a very strengthening of joy, so it becomes almost ecstatic. And then with this mind suffused with that uplifting joy, with that ecstatic joy, then as one persists with the practice, sort of the rapturous tone starts to settle down, the exhilaration settles down, and the body becomes tranquil. Actually, the body becomes tranquil, the mind becomes tranquil. And when the body and the mind become tranquil, then there persists a kind of pleasant feeling. This is sukha. And sometimes certain types of sukha are sort of rejected or critiqued by the Buddha. Worldly pleasure, pleasure of sensual indulgence. But the Buddha also extols the kind of higher pleasure, the pleasure of deeper meditative states. And so this is kind of pleasure that accords with the Dhamma. And so with this feeling of pleasure, or we could even say happiness as a basis, then the mind becomes concentrated. This is the verb here is samadhyati, which is the verbal base of the noun samadhi. So in other words, here the practitioner enters a kind of samadhi based on recollection of the Buddha. So I'm not sure if this term occurs in the text, but we could maybe coin an expression, Buddha nusati samadhi. So it's concentration, meditative absorption based on recollection of the Buddha. But according to the commentaries, with texts like the Visuddhimagga, it's not a jhana concentration. It's still at the level of access. So the mind is collected, focused, one-pointedly on the qualities of the Buddha, but it doesn't go into absorption, into full absorption of jhana. Okay, so then the Buddha sort of sums up, he says, this is called a noble disciple who dwells in balance amidst an unbalanced population, who dwells unafflicted amidst an afflicted population. Yeah, and here again we have some interesting words. So the word translated as in balance or balance in Pali is samma, which is related probably etymologically to the English word same. It has the sense of being equal. And it also in Pali, it has the nuance of being righteous. Maybe the word righteous in English is getting some bad press because it carries over nuances of being self-righteous. But actually righteous originally has good connotations, being right in the sense of being morally right, adhering to high moral standards. So this is one who dwells in balance or who is right amidst an unbalanced population. Or we could say who dwells in righteousness amidst an unrighteous population, who dwells unafflicted amidst an afflicted population. But also this word translated as afflicted could also be translated perhaps as harmful in the sense of inflicting harm on others, and unafflicted as not inflicting harm on others. So we could say who dwells harmless amidst a harmful population. And then concluding, he speaks of this disciple as one who has entered the stream of the Dhamma. And the Pali word here is not exactly the same as stream enterer, but it's Dhamma sotang samapano. So it's sort of suggesting that expression, the stream enterer is sotapanna, and here it uses Dhamma sota. So that is the stream of the Dhamma, and samapano is entered. So maybe you could see sotapanna as a contraction of Dhamma sotang samapano, one who has entered the stream of the Dhamma. So this is recollection of the Buddha. And maybe before we go further, maybe I could see if we have any questions on this first section in the sutta. And the way to ask questions, if you are on the Zoom, is to use the hand symbol. But first we always give preference to the people who took the trouble to travel here in person, who are not sitting in the comfort of their homes or their rooms in front of their computers, but who have traveled the long distance, even if it's a few hundred yards, to come to the library for the... So any in-person questions? Okay, so then we can go to the people online. And so I just see one. This is Doran.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. I'm curious about the word anusati. Over here we said it is mentioned as a recollection of the Buddha. I think I heard it used as a contemplation. And even that doesn't seem like a perfect translation. If you could tell us a little bit about this word. And
yeah, actually I should have actually explained that word. Yeah, okay, so here we have the verb form recollects. So the verb is anusarati, and the corresponding noun is anusati. And this is derived from the prefix anu plus the word sati. And sati is the word that we always translate as mindfulness. And so here we have mindfulness connected with the prefix anu, and anu can convey the sense of repetition, or being close to, going along with, following along with. So maybe all of those nuances of anu enter into the term anusati. So this is a mindfulness which is repeated in relation to the qualities of, or designations of the Buddha, in this case, the Buddha, or mindfulness which draws close to the qualities of the Buddha, or mindfulness which follows along with, in the sense of reviews, the qualities of the Buddha.
Thank you so much. It helps a lot. It helps also interpreting the practice of anapanasati, fourth tetrad. It's the same anusati, right?
Well, in anapanasati, we don't have anu. Let me just put that up. So that is anapanasati. So here we have ana is in breath. So that is actually a compound of ana.
Oh, I didn't mean the word anapanasati. I meant in the fourth tetrad, the word anusati of the Dhammas. Nupasati maybe.
Oh no, that's anupassana.
Okay.
Yeah, that is anupassana. Or here we have the personalized form. Dhammanupassi. So there we have anupassi, which is based on a different verb. It's not the verb sarati, but the verb passati, to see. So this is seeing again and again, or seeing that draws close to its subject, or the seeing that follows along with its subject. So it's different. The prefix is the same, but the verbal base is different.
Thank you so much. Useful.
Bodhi, I have a question.
Oh, is it? I see.
I'm curious why you translate sugata as fortunate instead of well gone.
Yeah. It's a word that I struggled to translate because, okay, the literal meaning, as I said, is well gone. Maybe in English, at least in certain circles, that almost has like negative connotations. Like if a noisy neighbor comes over and starts talking to you for like 2 hours, and you just sit there patiently waiting, when is he going to stop talking? Then finally he says, okay, I have to go now. Then he goes out to the door and you close the door and you think, wow, he's well gone. He's well gone. Yeah, but that's not sugata. But there is a use of the word sugata sometimes. It occurs in the formula when the Buddha is explaining the divine eye, which sees how beings pass away and take rebirth. So he sees, one of the things he sees is how beings, some are sukata and others are dukkata. So sukata is well gone, contrasted with dukkata. Dukkata is badly gone. And the sense is that's the way I would understand this in English. Ones who are sukata are fortunate in that they're living under good conditions, in a good realm of existence, either the human realm or heavenly realm, and have good material conditions, whereas the dukkata are living, either have been reborn in the bad realms or in the human realm living under difficult conditions. So that's why I use fortunate. Okay, I say Gita.
Yes, Bhante. Thank you for the teachings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Bhante, I was going to say, when I do Buddhanussati, my experience has been an overwhelming amount of gratitude to the Buddha. I see myself falling at his feet with lots of love.
Yeah.
And like a kind of unconditional love to the Buddha and enormous amount of gratitude, which brings joy and rapture to the heart. And it's an incredible feeling because he's saving billions of beings, not just millions, trillions, billions, uncountable, incalculable number of beings. So there's so much of joy and appreciation and gratitude to the Buddha. I see myself at his feet constantly when I'm bringing Buddhanussati to the mind. Is this all a good thing to recollect? Like, I mean, these feelings that are popping up in the mind, is it something that we should encourage and practice? And is this correct, or am I seeing it the wrong way?
No, I think naturally those feelings will start to come up. And I say in the initial stages, you can let them come up and let them take their course. But in order to, I would say that those feelings indicate the stage of, let me just scroll down a bit. Yeah, those feelings that come up, so those are different aspects of, I would say, the joy connected with the Dhamma, the joy and the rapture. This would be the joy and the rapture. So you let them come up, but don't hold on to them. You want to let them sort of run their course and then settle down in order for both the body and the mind to move on to the stage of passaddhi. That's the stage of tranquility.
Yes, Bhante. It's such a powerful meditation. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise it becomes, well, a little bit like a Buddhist variant on, I don't know if you know the word, what do they call them? The Hare Krishnas? I used to see them on the subways in New York City. So they used to gather in Union Square Park and maybe Central Park and sort of chanting the name of Hare Krishna, and then they would get up and dance around in circles. So, that's the kind of ecstatic joy which is not directed towards tranquility and equanimity. Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
agreed.
I see another electronic hand come up, Samangi.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. I actually want to piggyback on the previous question a little bit because when all these feelings, I don't know whether feelings is the right word, come when you think about the gratitude of Buddha, but I sometimes try to not let it go too far, thinking, like Buddha said, my Dhamma is like a way to cross the river, not to keep the what do you call
just not to hold on to.
Yeah, just not to hold on to. So it's more than praise. That's I want to actually do the part that Buddha taught rather than just being very grateful. And so lot of the time when that comes, I let it go for a little bit, but I feel like if I let it go too much, I'm going in, just like you said, Hare Krishna kind of thing. So I try to stop myself.
Yeah, that is correct. Or what I say, maybe I wouldn't use the expression that you try to stop yourself, but if it comes up naturally, those feelings, you let them run their course and just sort of, you note them, you recognize them when they're present, but don't hold on to them. Don't ride along with them too far, but let them run their course, and then they'll subside. And then one moves from that stage of joy and rapture to the stage of tranquility, and then towards the samadhiyati.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so maybe then we'll try to get in another recollection today. So we'll move on to the recollection of the Dhamma. And this is the way it's sort of explained in the canonical text. I have a different way of doing the recollection of the Dhamma, which I won't explain today. But if you join our retreat, the after Thanksgiving Day retreat, then we'll be doing the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then I'll explain my way of doing the recollection of the Dhamma. But we'll just take the canonical way. So here we have the noble disciple recollects the Dhamma thus, and then we have this stock formula for the Dhamma. So we have, and it, when you just look at it superficially, it all seems the same, but there are subtle differences in what is being described by this formula. So first we have the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, by the Buddha, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, then applicable to be personally experienced by the wise. I really should have copied and pasted in the Pali words. Okay, it's a little late for that perhaps, but I'll just maybe type them in without diacritical marks. Okay, so the well expounded, the expression well expounded, we make a distinction, maybe we could say, between the Dhamma of the scriptures, or the Dhamma of the teaching, the verbal teaching, the Dhamma of practice, and the Dhamma of realization. Sometimes in later terminology, these are called pariyatti, patipatti, pati veda. And the stock formula that we use on Wednesday, we say, Uttamangena vandehang dhamman chati vidang varang. So with my head, I venerate the threefold Dhamma. So what is that threefold Dhamma? The Dhamma of the expounded, the verbal Dhamma, the textual Dhamma, then the Dhamma of practice, and the Dhamma of realization. So all of those are indicated in this little formula with 6 expressions. So first we have what we call the scriptural Dhamma, or the Dhamma, the verbal Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. And so this is often, we see that it's said to be good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, and many ways of explaining how the Dhamma is well expounded. It's well taught both in the meaning and the phrasing and so on. Okay, so this is directly visible, sanditiko. So this is referring to the Dhamma of realization, that it's something, the Dhamma is a truth that can be seen, that can be experienced and realized for oneself. And so the word, you could say sanditiko, sort of the base of it is the word ditti, which here doesn't mean just a conceptual view, but it's an object of seeing, that it's we practice in order to see the truth of the Dhamma. And when your practice is successful by developing sufficient degree of samadhi and prajna or panya, wisdom, then one actually sees the truth of the teaching. Then the next quality, translated immediate, yeah, the Pali word is a kaliko, which is based on the word kala, meaning time. The word kala means time, and something that takes time to bring its results is said to be kaliko. And that which doesn't take time to bring its results is akaliko. And I think one could understand this in several ways. Sometimes I've heard it said that the Dhamma is a kaliko in the sense that the Dhamma applies to any period, any era, any epoch. So whether it's India in the 5th century BC, or Europe or America, North America, South America in the, the 21st century of the Common Era, the truth of the Dhamma is the same. It doesn't vary with time. That might be true, but I don't think that is the actual intended sense of a kaliko. I think the sense that's intended is that when the practice comes to its, and the practice takes time. So don't think that the Dhamma is a kaliko means that you just start to practice and immediately you get the fruit. It takes patience, persistence, determination, conviction, effort, and all of those qualities that are necessary in the practice. And you have to stick with it for months and years and probably for lifetimes. But so in that sense, it's kaliko, it takes time. But when the practice reaches its fulfillment, then it becomes a kaliko. You reach the point of fulfillment, and then that sort of window opens up, or the door opens up, and you see into the truth of the Dhamma. So in that way, a kaliko is something immediate, just as when I open up my fist, then you can see the throat lozenges in my hand. Okay, then the next designation is translated in a maybe clumsy way, inviting one to come and see. So it's based on two imperatives in the Pali language. Ehi means come, and passa means, it's an imperative meaning see. So it's saying come and see, and then it's turned into an adjective with iko. So ehi passiko, it's like the Dhamma is saying to you, come and see. And this could apply, I would say it could indicate the Dhamma both in the senses of practice and realization. So it's saying to you, come and undertake the practice, and then you will see that it brings benefits. And so whatever aspect of practice you take up, you'll see that it brings some benefits. You undertake the precepts, the 5 precepts, and as you observe them, you see the benefits. You undertake some form of meditation practice to clarify and purify the mind. You see that it brings benefit. You undertake the practice of insight, vipassana. You see that it brings benefit. So in that sense, you could say the Dhamma brings, as you undertake the practice, you can confirm that it's beneficial. And then ehipassiko can also refer to the Dhamma of realization, that when you practice comes to the peak of maturity and that eye of Dhamma opens up, then you see the truth of the teaching, and then you can verify directly for yourself, yes, what the Buddha teaches is true. Okay, the next quality, it's very difficult to translate. In fact, there have been different translations. Opa, opanayiko. So this is based on a prefix upa plus a verb neti. The verb upa gives a sense of near or close, and neti has the sense of to bring. And so upaneti as a verb has the sense of to bring near. And then what happens when you form an adjective, the U gets transformed into an O. These are just features of Pali, what is that called? Phonetics, phonology. And the E turns into AYA, but then it gets turned into an adjective. So it becomes opanayako. So the sense is that the Dhamma is something that brings near, or maybe that is to be brought near. So sometimes it's explained as opanayako in that it brings one near to nirvana, to nibbana, that it is what approaches, that the practice draws you ever closer to nibbana. So that could be one sense. It leads, some translators use leads onward, within brackets, it leads onward to nibbana. But I came to understand the sense is that the Dhamma is something to be brought near to oneself, in the sense of something to be applied to oneself. So we could have different interpretations, and we don't have any way to determine definitively this is the correct meaning, but maybe both of them were intended. Okay, then we have the expression Pachatang veti tabo vinyu hi. Pachatang veti tabo vinyu hi. So this is clearly referring to the Dhamma of realization. So pachatang means each one for themselves, that we have to do the work ourselves, we have to realize ourself. And the Buddha, elsewhere he says, you yourself must undertake the practice. The Buddhas only point out the path. Nobody can liberate another. You have to do the work to liberate yourself. So it's something personally, something to be done, each person for themselves. Pachatang vedi tabo, to be understood, to be realized, to be experienced. And it's not to be experienced by foolish people, but vinyu hi, by wise people. So people without the seed of wisdom won't realize the Dhamma, but those with wisdom can realize it. Okay, so that takes us through these 6 expressions in the description of the Dhamma. And I have to say, personally, I find this a bit more difficult to practice than recollection of the Buddha, maybe because recollection of the Buddha sort of corresponds with the devotional disposition of the mind, whereas recollection of the Dhamma involves more intellectualization. So I found a different way to do recollection of the Dhamma, which I won't explain today, but I'll explain it and we'll do it together when we have the post-Thanksgiving retreat. Okay, if we have time maybe for just a couple of questions before we have to break. So again, any questions in the room? Okay. It's good to take the microphone.
Thank you, Bhante. Could you tell us what do you see in Sanditiko? Are there any particular visual forms that we're expected to see? When you say directly visible, the Dhamma being directly visible. Yeah.
He's asking, are there any visible forms that one should see in relation to this expression, directly visible? No, it's not a matter of seeing any kind of visible forms, but this is, in a way, it's a metaphorical expression, seeing, to indicate that it's an inner intuitive seeing with wisdom, seeing the truth of something, not seeing something with with imagination.
So it's more in the context of understanding deeply.
Yeah, but it's more, maybe the word seeing indicates that it's more than just understanding, but it's an understanding which is so direct, clear, and immediate that it is analogous to seeing.
Okay.
So as I said, just as you see well, I don't know if you can see it from that distance, but you might see the little lozenges that I'm holding in my hand. So you see that truth of the Dhamma. I think the text uses a simile of there's a little fruit, maybe like a plum, holding a plum in the hand. If I open the hand, you see the plum.
All right. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, and then I see you're wrong.
Yes, Bhante, a very quick question. You mentioned the Dhamma of teaching, practice, and realization. So for Opanayiko, is that practice, and Pachatam, when you Veditabo Vinuity, is that realization?
Yeah, I would put the Opanayiko under the heading of practice, and this one, the personally experienced by the wise, of course, is the aspect of realization.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll have to stop now for the day. And so we will end with the sharing of the merits. Okay, so I'll recite the verses for sharing of the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu desanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu mang parang. Okay, then the next verse, the verse of sending loving kindness and compassion, we can direct specifically towards the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people of Gaza, but also to the Israelis and other nationals being held hostage, and to their relatives who are deeply anxious, worried, and concerned for their well-being, and also the almost forgotten people of Myanmar, who are living now under a very oppressive regime. And there have been some developments, changes that bring at least a glimmer of light, just maybe a small glimmer of light to Myanmar. I don't want to explain them now, but you can go to a website that's called Myanmar Now for more information. So we do the verse, Dukkha patachani dukkha, bhaya patachani bhaya, soka patachani soka, hantu sabbepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And we'll end with
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Don't sadhu yet, we have 3 bows.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
No, we're going to do 3 bows, so don't do the sadhu yet.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, we could stand here in 3 bows.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, so thank you for joining.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bante.
thank you,
Bow to
Bante.
Bante. Thank you, Bante Bodhi. Bow to
Thank you,
Bante.
Bante.
Thank you, Bante. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Be safe and well.
Good health, Bante. Long life.
Bante.
Yeah, we'll continue with the sutta next week.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Bante.
So much. Namo Buddhaya Bante. Thiruvan Sarnai. Take care, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you,
Stay
Bante.
well. Bye.
Okay, take care. Okay, so I stopped the share and now I will.
Thank you, Bante.
I'll have to end the program now.